Hello, friend. John Dalton here, Further Emergence podcast, where we go into consciousness, the mystery, and love. And in this episode, we're going into genius, rest, behind the scenes work, meditation, joy, and questions about negativity, self-abandonment, distractions, relationships, and childhood trauma. Let's start off, though, by having a quick review of the memes on the Further Emergence Instagram feed. So the first one is a quote from Arthur Schopenhauer. And it says, talent hits a target no one else can hit. Genius hits a target no one else can see. I really like this. I think it just something about it really resonates with me. Not because I think there are geniuses. Maybe there are, maybe there aren't. That doesn't matter. But I think we all have a bit of genius in us. We all have the capacity to be genius, not to be geniuses, but there is a genius in us. And one of the ways I think that you can bring it forth is by knowing that it has the capacity to see something that other people can't see, which kind of goes contrary to the way where we think about things. Because if you explain something to somebody and they're like, what are you talking about? There's a feeling of like, oh, is there something wrong with me? How come they don't get it? Whereas when you view it from the lens of genius, it's like, that must be a bit of my genius, particularly if it's very clear to you, this, what you're seeing, this, whatever it is, whether it's culinary, whether it's in physics or horticulture, doesn't matter. Music, art, doesn't matter what it is. The fact that you can see it and other people don't see it is I think an indication of your genius coming through. And rather than going, oh, well, no one else can see this, what's wrong with me? Going, okay, as Schopenhauer says, I'm seeing something that other people can't see. So I think it's brilliant. Next one I did write. It's about rest. It says, it can wait. Rest. You've done enough for now. Rest. Be kind to yourself and rest. I don't think we rest enough. I have to work at it. It's not something that comes naturally to me anymore. I'm sure it must have when I was very young. But, I had the whole work ethic drummed into me. So the idea of resting just seems like, isn't that being lazy? And I don't think I'm on my own with that. So the idea of consciously resting, of consciously going, okay, I've done enough. It's time to rest now. It's time to rest my little body, rest my little brain, my little mind, my little frontal awareness, It's dealing with all of this, dealing with existence, dealing with all of this stuff is just, it's tiring, It's like I said before in another episode, I was talking about bringing my little puppies when they were, my dogs, when they were puppies, bringing them to this out for the first time, and how afterwards they were exhausted from the stimulation. It's resting from that as well. So it's not like, sometimes people can make a work of resting. It's not to do that. It's to actually rest. Do whatever gives you rest, And if that means doom scrolling for like half an hour, if that makes you feel rested, fine. I'm sure there's all sorts of studies saying it's terrible for you, but if it makes you feel rested, then do that. Or if it's like being in complete silence, or if it's having a nap. I'm a big fan of naps. They're great. Not for long. Like 15 minutes. It's amazing how rejuvenating a 15-minute nap can be. If I nap for longer than that, I start to get I get into the sleep too much, and then I do feel a bit drugged. But yeah, 15 minutes, very good. So yeah, rest. The next one is a picture of, it's like a representation of somebody in energy. It's just the top part of their body and their head, but you can kind of see their brain in there as well. So it's like they're made out of light, and they're luminous. They're a bit luminous. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh, that's the way people appear to me when I'm working with them one-to-one. So when I'm working with people one-to-one, there's a part of it where we talk, they're on Zoom, and so they're in whatever country they're in, and I'm here in Ireland. And Then there's a part where we turn off the cameras. Now, we only turn off the cameras because I'm too self-conscious. Because when I do this work, quite often actually, I like to move, and I know I won't do it if the cameras are on. So when the cameras go off and the other person at the other end lies down, and it's very like meditation. I've got my eyes closed and I'm going into the mystery and I'm connecting with the person in the mystery, this very deep, deep level. The mystery is a very non-verbal, non-representative place. There's nothing there really to speak of. But often a connection I'll have with the person will represent itself to me visually. And it looks like this. When I saw that, I was like, oh, that's the way people are in the mystery. Not always. Just depends on what's going on for the person. But often I see them like that. So what I wrote was, working with someone across the vast distance, which is an illusion, we connect in mind and heart and spirit. In that connection, miracles are born. With my eyes closed, this is often how they look to me. So, yeah, I just thought it was a nice little... It's very hard to describe the one-to-one work because it's borderline magic as far as I can see, and I'm the one doing it. And I'm as delighted, that it works as well as it does as the people that I work with, and they have amazing turnarounds on all levels, spiritually, emotionally, physically. It's miraculous, and it's amazing how it works that we can connect over these apparent distances. I mean, I know how it works on a deep level, but I find it hard to talk about because it sounds like magic, that I'm in this country, another person might be in Australia or London or Canada or wherever, and that we can connect, and that the work that we do together has such profound effect. So when I saw this, I was like, okay, well, that kind of goes a little bit towards explaining it. Next one is, I didn't write this, but it's very good. It says, meditation. It's better than sitting around doing nothing. Which is great. It's great on lots of levels. Because you could say meditation is sitting around doing nothing, but it's a very active nothing. When we close our eyes and we turn off the pictures and we turn off the sound, we're going into the mystery. We're going very deeply into the mystery, And it is, in a way, doing nothing, because it's nothing from my mind's point of view. From my mind's point of view, that's why it's so boring. It's why it's so difficult to meditate. It's so difficult to have a meditation practice, because from my mind's point of view, it's like, that's just doing nothing. I'm just bored stiff, And I go into this a lot in the training, the meditation for growth and consciousness training, because meditation on its own, in isolation, I don't think I would have kept it up if there was no reason for it. But in the context of growing my consciousness, or assisting in the process of the growth in my consciousness, which just happens naturally anyway, meditation is fantastic. And that's, when it's put in that context, then it makes sense. And it expands out across the whole of my life as well. But yeah, it's good fun. Meditation, it's better than sitting around doing nothing. Next one I did write. It was an insight I had. I was walking along somewhere on one of my walks, and I just suddenly realized that there is a lot of joy in wisdom. No, I realized there's a lot of wisdom in joy. And that's what this meme says, there is wisdom in joy. And the weird thing is, when I realized that, it was shocking, because I kind of went, yeah, you don't normally associate wisdom with joy. Normally it's like joy is like the party that happens after the wisdom happens. Something like that. But I realized that, no, there is a lot of wisdom in joy itself. Not that you try and cultivate joy, meaning, I've got to be happy, I've got to feel joyful. If I don't feel joyful, I'm doing something wrong. I don't mean that. It's more a case of seeing how important joy is, and not to trivialize it, and not to kind of think, oh, well, that's just the bonus prize for wisdom. It's actually, the wisdom is baked into the joy, because in joy there is a connection with very deep truth. And in that there is the wisdom. Because it's like, when you think about very deep truth, it's heavy. It can be heavy, And joy is extremely light. It's probably one of the lightest things in existence. It's not really in existence because it all happens inside you. But because it's a connection into a very deep truth, like I think God is very joyous, or the energy of God, or I don't like using that word, but there's something profound about joy that's easy to overlook because it's, it can seem a bit fluffy. And it's not fluffy. It's very light. But there's deep, deep truth and joy and deep wisdom and joy, in my experience. Farm news. Well, it was the summer solstice on Wednesday. So sometimes I move to do something about that. Sometimes I get up and do something. And I was this one as well. So I got up early. I checked the time. And I had to get up at 4 o'clock or something like that, 4:30. The sun was set to rise at 5:20. So I had figured out where I would go. I walked down the valley a bit, up the side of the valley a bit. And it was amazing. Normally, my experience of sunrises have been a bit anticlimactic. Mainly because in Ireland, it takes a long time for the sun to come up. And then there's nearly always low-lying cloud on the horizon line. So you don't get this beautiful orb kind of thing that you see in movies. Generally, I would get bored. Then I'd, get distracted. And then I'd look around and go, oh, it's up. The sun is up now. Because it's, when I set off on my little walk to watch the sun, it's bright. I didn't need a torch or anything like that. Now, the sun wasn't up, but it was, there was enough light to see where I was going. But on Wednesday, this one, it was very good. I did get to see the orb. It's probably the most satisfying sunrise I've ever seen. I took a little bit of video of it, which if you're watching on YouTube, I'll put in. And there was this beautiful mist, low-lying mist all along the valley. And the sun on the mist was very magical and beautiful. And then the sun rose, and then the mist came in again. Normally it burns away, but yeah, it was very, very lovely. So yes, that's the main news. The weather has turned here. It's like we have jumped into the end of autumn. It's been raining for days. It's not cold, but it's been pretty relentless rain. So I don't know what's going on there, but that's what's been happening. Have you signed up for my friendly notes that I send out on Sundays? If you go to furtheremergence.com, a little thing will appear on the bottom of the screen saying, hey, stay in touch. And you can sign up there. I send them out every Sunday, and they're good fun. And one of the things I feature in them is the latest bit of writing that I've done, which is in my blog, which is also on furtheremergence.com. This is the life hack section. The life hack for this week is about breathing through your mouth. There's a great book all about this called Breath, I think it's Breath, by James Nestor. Whole book, which I read. And I had kind of been interested in not breathing through my mouth, but after reading that book, part of the book is, or the spine of the book is a study that he did with himself and another chap, where they, I want to say 100 days. They did 100 days of only breathing through their mouths and 100 days of only breathing through their nose. And they went in for blood tests and medical checks and physicals and all this kind of thing. They scienced the hell out of it. And the results were amazing. So, yeah, that's the tip. Don't breathe through your mouth whenever possible, especially when you're asleep. Even if you have to tape your mouth shut, which he did. Just a little bit of tape, just to keep your mouth from falling open. I don't do that because I've got a beard. It doesn't work on a moustache. The tape doesn't work on a moustache. But I'm very conscious of it. I'll prop things under my chin to make sure my mouth doesn't fall open when I sleep. But particularly when you're exercising or anything like that, you don't have to breathe through your mouth. That's all just habit of like, I'm running. I have to, You don't have to do that. In fact, there's a lot of very top athletes who have won like gold medals in the Olympics, runners, and they don't breathe through their mouth when they're running. So yeah, it's so good for you to just breathe through your nose whenever. There's never really a time that you need to breathe through your mouth, unless only if your nose is blocked, but that doesn't happen that often. So that's my tip. No more mouth breathing. I've got 3 trainings on the website: meditation, dealing with the psychic world, and a craniocycle one. If you're interested in training, go and have a look at them. furtheremergence.com. Now, in response to the question I post on Instagram, what's the biggest challenge you're facing in your spiritual life? A person wrote in and said, awareness of a broken system and everyone just keeps on going like nothing is going on. I'm still in my spiritual journey, so I'm relatively new to it, but I feel that negativity is obstructing me on my journey. It sometimes feels like I'm carrying the weight of the world, like Atlas. So it's understandable that it can feel like that, particularly, as you say, if you're at the beginning and you've just kind of... The beginning of the spiritual life can often feel like discovering you've got a lot more rooms in your house than you thought you had. It's like you find this doorway and you're like, wow, I didn't know that all these rooms were here. This is great. And then it's very natural to kind of go, hey, everybody, I've discovered all these rooms inside myself. You probably have them inside you too. But it doesn't really work like that in practice. Often you'll get a lot of pushback if you do that sort of thing. And in my experience of working with lots of people and in myself, I've come to a great respect for everybody's process and to not interfere with it. To trust in the bigger, deeper process of life, and that life knows what it's doing. And the only thing I can really do is to do with me and what my inner state is. So it's important to keep an open heart, and if I see something, on the TV or online or something that's very sad, people dying, people in pain, whatever, it's important to keep an open heart to that and to not spiritual bypass it and kind of go, oh, it's all an illusion or whatever, but to just feel it in my heart, and maybe I'll cry a bit or maybe I'll be sad, but then also to let it go and to go, well, I don't understand that. I don't understand why that thing's happening. If I was running the show, it wouldn't be. But I'm not running the show. I've got a very limited perspective on things. And I'm going to surrender to that. And I'm going to take care of what I can take care of, which is inside me. So I'll feel sad, and then I'll let it go, and I return to my own sweet nature. And I return to nurturing the sweetness in me. And, I look around, particularly if I see something online, because it's very easy when you're looking at something online to sort of feel like you're disappearing into it. Particularly if it's a compelling thing and you're like, oh my God, why did that? That's terrible. It's very good to sort of put it down, put the phone face down on the table and just come into where you are, come into your body. You've got a great little body. It's doing all this stuff. It's breathing, it's moving, it's taking in all the surroundings. If you don't have any pain in it, that's fantastic. And then maybe you're in a beautiful place. There's always a bit of beauty around somewhere if you start to look for it. And the more you start to look for it, it expands. You start to see more of it. But the more you focus on things and appreciate them, Not because you should, but it almost kind of happens naturally. You see the beauty, and even if you're in the middle of a city and you see a little daisy coming up between the cracks, or you see somebody doing something kind for somebody else, or you just see a beautiful smile, or the sun maybe comes out, or it's there's so many places for it. Even in the man-made stuff, the time people put into designing things. And I mean, okay, not everything's beautiful in the man-made stuff, but it's there. Beauty is there if you start to look for it, and the more you look for it, the more it expands. And the feeling of carrying the weight of the world, there's a certain amount of truth to that, because as you go into the spiritual life a bit more, you begin to sort of see that this all comes out of you, that it's a kind of a reflection of you in a way. And it's one of those hard ones to hold without feeling bad, because it's this thing that's come up a few times, where this quote from Rumi about that you are not a drop in the ocean, you're the whole ocean contained in a drop. So somewhere you kind of recognize that there are reflections in existence that you need to that are encouraging you to get your attention about something. So you can feel like, what is this place? What is this terrible place that I've come into? And that's understandable. And the separation of, this place doesn't reflect me. That's not how I feel on the inside. I don't want to invade any countries. I don't want to hurt anybody or leave anybody to drown or inflict any. It's so alien to me. This doesn't reflect me at all. Now, those are all fine to feel. But then you've also got to acknowledge that you're not actually the ocean. You're just a little drop of, the ocean, and that you are the whole ocean contained in a drop. But then there's also the ocean as well. And the ocean does kind of know the bigger picture, as I said. So not to sort of acknowledge it, but then also to be light with it at the same time, which is to hold kind of two opposing things at the same time, but that which is required a lot in the spiritual life. So it's fine to feel it, but let it go through, to not hang on to it. And to focus on the sort of things that do resonate with you, and to just give no energy to the other stuff. And in my experience, it grows. Whatever you focus on grows. So the more beauty you see, the more beauty you see. The more positivity or love or beauty, or the reflection of what's inside you, the more of that you see, well, the more you see. So I hope that helps. So another response to the question, what's the biggest challenge you're facing at the moment in your spiritual life? This person says, cognitive dissonance, contradictions. For example, meditation and no exercise, good food and smoking cigarettes. The contradictory nature of the mind-body relationship. The mind knows cigarettes are bad. The heart knows this too. The conscious self knows it's bad, but you smoke anyway. I almost feel that it may be an abandonment issue, a trust issue, self-abandonment, being contrary. I'm not sure about the abandonment side of it. To me, it just sounds like another day at the office, the spiritual office. Those kind of contradictions are part of what goes on. And to me, there are much more a reflection of just the different parts of me, like I've talked about the frontal part of me, the frontal awareness, the part of me that's talking to you now, the part of me that's got to talk to my neighbor, do my taxes, figure out how much petrol is or diesel is in the car, all that stuff. It's got to interface with existence, the frontal part of me. It's the least conscious part of me, and it has to deal with everything. And then, a little bit back from that, there's a more conscious part of me. A bit back from that, there's an even more conscious part of me. On the meditation training, I use this analogy of being in the cinema. So before you start meditating, or before you're interested in consciousness, You're in the front row of the cinema, your nose is practically on the screen of the cinema, and you think that what's happening on the screen is you, and you don't even know that you're in a cinema. And you start to meditate, and over a bit of time, then suddenly you're in the second seat, the seat behind you, or the row behind you, the seat behind you, and you can see yourself looking at the screen. So now there's like, you're aware of two different parts of you. And you can see yourself looking at the screen and going, being engaged in what's happening on the screen, and oh my God, it's amazing. And then with a bit more time, bit more meditation, you're in the third row, and you can see yourself in the second row, observing yourself in the first row. Okay? And maybe the part of you in the second row, because it's a little bit more conscious, but not as conscious as the part of you in the third row, you can see that the part of you in the second row has got opinions about the part of you in the front row, and it's like, oh, it's very unconscious. Why did I do that? Why did And then the third row maybe has a person. The third row part of you has opinions about the second row part of you and the front row part of you. And then, you meditate a bit more, and you can see yourself in the fourth row, or you connect with the part of you that's in the fourth row, observing the part of you in the third row, observing the part of you in the second row, observing the part of you in the first row, and so on. And it keeps going back up the cinema. And the cinema, goes back into darkness, as cinemas do. The darkness is the mystery, okay? So what you're describing is just the infighting that goes on among all these different parts. We like to think, and we all relate to each other as if we are one, beautiful homogeneous entity, but we're not. I'm certainly not on the inside. It's just a matter of which part of me has the microphone, and like my consciousness is almost like this overarching principle that contains all these different parts. And one part of me will be like, yeah, I want to have a cigarette. Another part of me will be like, no, I'm not having a cigarette. And then I find myself having a cigarette, and I'm like, oh my God, I failed. What's wrong with me? I know it's not good for me, and so on. That's kind of normal. That's just the way it is. And if you understand that your mind fundamentally just likes to exist. Okay? Your mind is kind of terrified of deep dreamless sleep, indirectly. It's like if you think about your fear of death, and if death is worst case scenario and the atheists are right, and you close your eyes for the last time and that's it, there's no more you. That's what your mind is afraid of. Okay? So the fact that happens every night, the only reason you're not hanging on to the bed sheets at night going, I don't want to go to deep dreamless sleep because I don't want to not exist, is that your mind is fairly confident that you're going to wake up again in the morning, that it's going to continue in the morning. Now there's natural processes there as well. I don't mean physiological natural processes, I just mean like spiritual natural processes where your mind just automatically is okay with it. But once it's awake, your mind wants to exist, and how your mind exists is by thinking. Now your mind doesn't really care what it thinks about once it's thinking. So if one part of you says or knows, oh, I shouldn't have a cigarette, or I shouldn't have that piece of cake, or I shouldn't whatever, and another part goes, yes, I should, I want it, and they have a fight, your mind is like, great, this is great, lots of thinking, it's fantastic. And then action is taken, the cigarette is smoked or not, and there's another fight breaks out, and your mind is like, brilliant. More thinking, fantastic, okay? And this is one of the benefits of meditation, is you get to see all this happening, you get to see the infighting and all the different parts, and then you also get to see that you are none of these things. If you're observing something, you can't be the thing that you're observing, and you actually, in a way you are, but what you're observing is your unconsciousness working itself out. So I've said before on the podcast that the most efficient way to bring unconsciousness to consciousness, or to transmute it into consciousness, is love. And it's the same with these parts of you on the inside. As I say, if you kind of recognize that you're this overarching container of all these different parts, and if you love them all the parts, the unconscious parts, the parts that want the cigarettes, the base parts, the very carnal parts, the lustful parts, the craving, sad, pathetic parts, if you love all those, the parts you're embarrassed about, if you love them equally with all the other parts, then you kind of parent them in a way. You kind of bring them into consciousness, because you're not, it doesn't work to try and suppress these things or push them down or control them or anything like that. Generally, when you push things down, they just come out the side. So that doesn't work. So when you love all these different parts of you and you listen to them and you negotiate with them and you kind of go, well, I haven't, if a strong craving came up in me for cigarettes, I haven't smoked in 35 maybe years. And it was great. I loved it when I did. But I only smoked for 2 years, but it was great. But I was addicted and it was not easy to get off them. So I don't want to go back there again. So if it came up for me, I would be negotiating with that part. I wouldn't be going, oh, for God's sake, I'm not having a cigarette, Number one, I've never denied how much I enjoyed smoking. I think that helps. And if it came up, I would be negotiating with that part of me. I'd be like going, well, it was very hard to get off them. I really don't want to go there again. Why do you want the cigarette? What's going on? What's behind that? And I keep letting that part of me talk to me until I understood it a bit more. And then I would be able to say to it, well, is there something else we can do that is similar but not that? Because that's addictive. If I have a cigarette today, I'll want 2 tomorrow, 4 the day after, and I'll be on 40 a day by the end of the week. This is my self-knowledge in action. I know myself well enough. Certain things I'm very addictive about, and cigarettes were one of them. So is there something else that we can do? I can feel that you're hurting and you think cigarettes are the answer, but is there something else that I can do for you? Because what I'm trying to do is, through loving these parts of me, I'm trying to get their trust. Because what I'm trying to do is I'm one of the things is I'm trying to get those parts of me to switch from taking over, where, I go, oh my God, I've just had a cigarette. Whoops. That's what one of those parts would just take over. I'm trying to switch from that to, when that part is hurting, that it comes to me and goes, I'm hurting, I want to have a cigarette. And then we can have a conversation about it, So the contrary nature is just part of unconsciousness. It's just the way consciousness kind of expresses itself in all these different fragmented, wounded parts of us. And you can see yourself, if you observe them, if you can observe them, which you can from what you were saying, you can observe them, then you can begin to negotiate with them and begin to help them become more conscious, which is beautiful. Okay, this question came in on the Further Emergence Discord. It says, how is it that everything is a distraction? I'm saying everything because they've put a lot of E's in the front of it. How? Everything? I know we already talked about this, but I just wonder about it. And then you said that couples usually get together to solve child traumas. Can you elaborate more on this idea, linking it with the distractions? A relationship is a distraction, but solving your traumas, communication and love is not? Or are those also distractions? I don't think I said... I didn't say that people get together to heal their childhood traumas. I said that when people get together, their childhood traumas can come up. And it's slightly different, but it's an important difference. So in terms of how is everything a distraction? Well, we've got clues to this all the time. We're giving ourselves clues to this all the time. Like if you think about Neo in the Matrix, where he's not when he's out and conscious and all that, when he was in the bathtub thing with all the wires. Okay, so think about that, or 2001: A Space Odyssey, when the astronaut guy, I can't remember his name, finally went into the obelisk, and he's in this white room with this antique furniture, and he just gets old there. Or more recently with Ready Player One, where the guy is having this big adventure in the virtual world. So if you kind of think of those things, right? Like let's say you go into this, you find yourself in this white room with nothing in it, nothing at all, except somewhere you can sit down, but which is also white, let's say, and some sort of headset or interface thing. And you put the interface thing on, and it's fantastic. It's this rainbow adventure place where all these amazing things happen. And then you take it off again, and you're in the white room, and you're like, oh, okay. And you put it on again, and it's in this amazing, and over time, you're just going to spend most of your time in the amazing adventure, Technicolor place, because it's a distraction from the white room, because the white room's boring in comparison. Similarly, it's a similar kind of thing. Everything in existence is a distraction. And from the perspective of our mind and our unconsciousness, it's a distraction from what feels like a white room, like just boring ass. Okay? You get a glimpse of it in meditation. Why is it so hard to meditate? Just sitting there with your eyes closed. In a way, you're pulling back from distractions, Now, your mind can kind of keep it going for a while because it can you can keep seeing internal pictures, and you can have long trains of thoughts, but that they all disappear in deep dreamless sleep. So like in meditation, it's kind of like you're going in. If you think of it externally, it's like everything, all the stimulus. It'd be like if suddenly, what's that show? Star Trek, where they have that holodeck, when they turn it off. It's like when you get rid of all distractions, it's like everything is turned off in the holodeck. So from that point of view, everything is a distraction. Every single thing in existence is a distraction. And what it's distracting you from is your own true nature, or your own experience of yourself, or your own experience of you minus all the distraction. Now, there's a risk with this kind of thinking that you could trivialize everything and go, oh, well, it's all just an illusion. It doesn't really matter. That's spiritual bypass. Don't do that. There are very important things communicated here. Like there's only two things that are real here as far as I can see: communication and love, and they're kind of very similar to each other. So it's like connecting with somebody through the internet. You can connect with somebody through the internet, and you can say, well, I'm not really having a real connection with them, and that's true in a way. You're not. It's very different to when you meet somebody in person. But if you tell somebody something deep and profound, and on the internet, or like through Zoom or something like that, and it resonates with them, that communication is real. It lands. And it's the same. We communicate with each other here. In a way, the internet and that way of communicating is a kind of reflection of what goes on inside. So, yes, relationships are a distraction, but they're really important. they're a distraction from the same way everything is a distraction. But that's not to say that you don't get involved and you don't love and you don't have relationships and you don't, things are brought up in relationships. That's what I was sort of saying, is that, with love, with Hollywood love, it's like, oh, happily ever after. They got together, they found each other, they got through the travails, they found each other, and the credits roll, and then they lived happily ever after. That's not my experience of how love works. My experience of how love works is that love is like a magnet or a vacuum that all this unconsciousness is drawn to. So when you are loved in a way that you haven't been loved before, often your unconsciousness comes out to meet that. And you can be behaving very badly and you're shocked at some of the things you say or do, and it'll be that. It'll be your unconsciousness coming up to be healed, And while that, on the one hand, all that is a distraction, on the other hand, that doesn't mean that you don't participate in it 100%, knowing what it is. That's the thing. It's like you engage in things knowing what it is, because you're not here by accident. You haven't, you don't wake up into this every day by accident. You're here for a reason. You've decided to come and have this experience for a reason. Okay, now you may not know what that reason is. You may not know what you're trying to figure out about yourself. Everybody seems to be trying to figure out something about themselves. But there's clues everywhere if you look for them and if you're open to them. So you can't just sit back and go, yeah, it's all a distraction. You can know it's a distraction, and if that comes up for you and you can feel the feeling of that white room, that you're stuck in, or you're not stuck in a white room, but it can feel like that to your mind, just in the same way as your mind can feel like meditation is boring. You can feel like that. Then it's important to feel it, but then if it passes, then you're back into the participation in the illusion that we're in. So communication is real and love is real. Those are the two things that I've seen that seem are real. What's communicated and love. And what better place than in relationship to get right into those, Like there's a lot of misinformation about relationships and love from Hollywood. And part of being in relationship is having those dissolved. That's one of the things that love does, is it dissolves them. So, yes, everything is a distraction, but that doesn't mean you discount everything. It's all part of this wonderful, it's an amazing illusion, isn't it? It's fantastic. It's so believable. It's wonderful. It's a wonderful thing to wake up into. And it's got all this interesting stuff. And yes, it's a distraction, but if you know it's a distraction, then you can enter into it without taking it too seriously, but also participating in it in a way more. You engage with it even more when you know it's not real, in a strange kind of way. All right, that's all I've got for you this time. I trust you're well. I trust you're of good cheer, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.